Greetings, I'm Robert Carillio.
And I'm Jeremy Hempy.
And I'm Kim McDonald. And this is
Green Arenas.
Hi, Green Arenas listeners, Jeremy Hempy here. Have you all noticed how modern life is noisy? Aggravating and irritating noises are piling up everywhere and is shown to be harmful to human health. This excessive noise is linked to sleep deprivation, hearing loss, and even heart disease. So the real question is, should this noise be a price we pay for progress? It shouldn't, and many noise sources have quieter and greener options. Things like battery-powered landscaping equipment that is replacing gas-powered to greatly reduce the grinding engine noises and exhaust pollution. 8 years ago, our co-host Robert Carillio was fighting noise pollution as much as he is today. Back then, he recorded a podcast that was never aired. He kindly provided this file to Green Arenas to use today, and it highlights the severity of the issue. Here is Robert's episode.
This is Robert Carillio, resident of Warren, Ohio, which is about a 50-minute drive southeast from downtown Cleveland. I'm a member of Noise Free America, a nonprofit organization dedicated to reducing noise pollution and restoring peace and quiet to our communities. I've long regarded noise pollution as a major quality of life issue and am taking on the role of being the unofficial spokesperson for the long suffering of noise pollution citizens of Warren. And I'm also taking on this opportunity of being your host in creating this recorded program about noise pollution and its little recognized ill effects on society. I was prompted to be a part of this after being continually assaulted with excessive noise in what was once a relatively peaceful neighborhood. Tolerable in the past were what I refer to as noises we accepted, and that may be a few cars passing through, the occasional lawnmower, or even a dog barking. But this has given way to a whole new level of noise pollution, and that is the ongoing round-the-clock blaring assault of boom cars and loud motorcycles, which in my estimation, in Warren, Ohio at least, occupy first and second place in the standings of the top most frequent noise annoyances to date. Joining me on this telephone-recorded program will be Judy Ellis, who represents the Florida chapter of Noise Free America, again, a nonprofit organization dedicated to reducing noise pollution. Noise Free America is one of several anti-noise groups that provide information on various noise issues and give people a chance to discuss and find solutions to the ever-growing problem of this kind of pollution. It's our hope that this program will help to raise public and governmental awareness as to just how serious a problem this is and how many other problems it contributes to. We would also hope that it can offer noise pollution sufferers some hope and a means for action in helping to curb it. Now, without further delay, I have a number of questions I would like to ask Judy, our guest. She's had some local success in St. Petersburg, Florida, in raising awareness and in helping to curb these new forms of noise pollution. Welcome to the program, Judy.
Thank you, Rob. Good to be here.
We're seeing a lot of stories these days from all over the world about new laws being passed to deal with noise pollution. What's this all about?
Well, it's no surprise that as the world becomes more industrialized, there is going to be more noise. It comes from all around us in buses and aircraft, lawn equipment, emergency sirens. It's a daily assault. But the latest twist, what we call the culture of rude, comes out of the love of loud music from loud stereos, often backed up with the painful throb of subwoofers.
What are subwoofers?
Those are special speakers usually installed in the rear or the trunk of a car, designed to amplify the bass in music. What comes out of them is not so much noise, or not so much music rather, as vibration. Everyone has heard them at intersections, a sort of buzzing, thumping, humming that makes doors and windows rattle.
And why are these a problem?
Well, people traditionally, or always, scientifically, we know that people feel uncomfortable when they get trapped where they can't get away from noise. They lose control of their environment. But the combination of loud stereo and subwoofer vibrations is particularly annoying, and for some people, those in whom this combination generates a sudden surge of adrenaline, the effect is painful, and because it's adrenaline, the person feels a flight or fight response that can often lead to aggression and even violence.
Yeah, we see articles in the paper all the time about people being injured or even killed over a noise dispute. Is that what's happening here?
Yeah, that's exactly what it is. And about 10% of the population, as best as we can determine, the ability to shrug off or ignore or quote-unquote tune out the stereo subwoofer combo isn't there, and it's physical. The sufferer has no choice. In some, the result is pain in the head. For others, it's pain in the chest or stomach. And in the worst cases, there may be sweating or trembling. This is very unhealthy stuff.
What about the hearing component?
Oh, that's epidemic. Experts estimate that at this time, about 28 million Americans have some hearing loss, and that about 15% of the population under the age of 18 is demonstrating signs of impairment. Many of these are middle school children whose hearing is being damaged by iPods, as well as being injured by their own parents or siblings as they drive around town with a stereo pumped up. Even worse, small babies strapped into the rear of the family car only inches from the speakers are showing not just hearing loss, but brain damage, and they're entering school with learning disabilities caused by exposure to what audiologists refer to as acoustic overstimulation.
You mentioned a flight or fight response, I believe. Is that correct?
Fight or fight, yes.
Why do people seem to become so violent in reacting to this?
We're still trying to get a handle on this syndrome, and we aren't seeing much from the medical world. But we know it's real because the anti-noise websites get regular cries for help from people being driven to near insanity by these so-called boom cars. I had a sweet little lady in Texas send me a pitiful email a couple of years ago. She said, "God help me, Judy, but when I hear this noise, I want to kill someone." And I knew exactly what she was talking about.
It's that bad?
Oh, very much so. A word you hear constantly from sufferers is grenade. When they're trapped in their homes or at a traffic light and this combination of noise and vibration assaults them, they can exhibit signs of temporary insanity. Suddenly they're swept up in a rage that seems to take over the entire body. They lose control. And then minutes later they're asking themselves, what did I just do? And they feel alone. They think there must be something wrong with them, and they're embarrassed and ashamed and afraid to tell anyone. But it's just their body responding to this sudden surge of adrenaline.
It seems that loud is everywhere. Movie theaters, out on the streets, above and beyond what we were used to hearing. Restaurants with music, shopping when you go to the grocery store. Even a submarine sandwich shop that I was in the other day, I had to shout to the clerk to place my order because the music was too loud. It seems that loud is all over the place. What do you think about that? Why?
We seem to love loud in this country. I don't know what it is. I can't understand why we are turning to this, but the popularity of NASCAR is certainly a symptom of this phenomenon. And in restaurants, I've had restaurants tell me when I've complained about the noise, people come in here because they like this sort of, what's the word they use? It's not activity. There's some word they use for the environment that a noisy restaurant creates that draws customers. And I can't figure it out because I don't want to ever eat in a place like that. But we see the damage. There is damage turning up now from this stuff, definitely.
So what are the new laws trying to address?
Well, first of all, complaints about noise make up the bulk of calls to the non-emergency numbers of police departments. In most towns, about 80% of calls coming in are for noise. That's everything from barking dogs to loud air conditioners, but a lot of it is stereo noise. And little villages that used to rely on common courtesy to control antisocial behavior are now finding they have to pass a law to remind people to be nice to their neighbors. And a lot of that not nice behavior is coming from passing cars using their stereos to draw attention to themselves.
So basically, we have to make laws now to dictate what common sense used to tell us, and that is to have manners, common courtesy to thy neighbor. So how effective are these laws?
Well, unfortunately, there are a lot of laws out there that, as you say, we didn't used to have to worry about, and towns didn't have to worry about passing them. But once they do pass them, enforcement becomes very, very important. But enforcement is also very difficult. A police officer is trying to ticket a moving object, and even if he can hear the subwoofer, in traffic it's hard to tell which car is making the noise. We do know without a doubt, though, that where enforcement is consistent and where the fines are punishing, the problem does diminish. Another factor is that this kind of noise and crime are related. And police now know this. A few years ago, a police officer in Gainesville, Florida, noticed that about 1 car in 4 stopped for a noise offense turned out to contain guns or drugs or people wanted on warrants. And this information is spread around the state, so the police are a lot keener now to pull over the noisemakers. It's a way of reducing crime all across the board.
So, for these noise offenses, what's considered adequate punishing for this?
Well, it's a very wide variety. So a huge range in this sort of thing, but the places that take it really seriously are imposing penalties that include stiff fines of over $500, and in some cases over $1,500. They can impound the equipment of the vehicle or impound the equipment or the car or both, and they even impose jail time. Conversely, of course, where the fines are low or enforcement is spotty, the problem gets worse because the people who are doing this refer to a low fine as simply the cost of doing business.
We see occasional news items from other countries, especially England, and information in these articles about the public not liking this exported to their countries, this whole culture of loud. Are they doing something different to deal with this problem?
Yeah, as a nation, a lot of the foreign countries don't accept loud the way we do. We have a certain level of incomprehensible acceptance, and it's incomprehensible to me as a country that loud is simply part of being. Other parts of the world don't see it that way, and in England, they refer to this legally as antisocial behavior. And the noise itself has resulted in a flurry of new laws, most of which allow for the extraordinary measure of actually requesting the offender to leave his house and move away. They can do that, of course, because they have these council towns. We're exporting this unhealthy hobby, and other countries do not find it acceptable. A first offense in the United Arab Emirates, for example, results in the immediate confiscation of the car. So,
the law is the answer for now? Is this what we have to depend on, the law?
Unfortunately for now, yeah. This is the only methodology we've got until we can find a way to educate the offenders about what they're doing to themselves, to their families, and their neighborhoods. One of the things we've discovered is that in cities where law enforcement does not recognize the severity of the problem, where they still consider boom cars merely a nuisance, people really go into despair. We see depression, thoughts of suicide, feelings of absolute helplessness. Whenever I speak to law enforcement agencies, I always emphasize that hope is a key element here. I have seen people literally become unhinged because the officers they turn to either can't or won't hold out a hand to them and say, "We understand, we're going to try to help." Lots of police departments, in fact, do not understand. And that's why I'm very proud of our police here in St. Petersburg. When I first approached them about this problem about 3 years ago, they didn't get it. They had that noise is a nuisance mindset, and what I'd call about a boom car, I'd get vast indifference. About a year later, things began to change. The police now recognize this as a serious problem, a quality of life problem, a crime-related problem, and in most areas of the city now, you can call about a noise situation and get a meaningful and sympathetic response. Many cities are now figuring it out and taking really stern measures. But in other places, it's like talking to the wall. Louisiana, for example, seems to be the worst. We get constant, and I might add, very angry emails from all over that state complaining about a lack of assistance that seems to go all the way to the governor's mansion.
Now, you had another guy in Ohio besides me, and we spoke of this off the program or off the air, and his reactions to this noise, this kind of noise, was something that beyond my wildest dreams. What is he going through?
Well, on a scale of 1 to 10, this person is a 10. This is a person for whom the combination of loud decibels and subwoofer vibrations has created the very worst form of somatic bodily response, so that the anger is instantaneous. There's a rage. The person is suffering from depression. It's affected his working life. It's affected his social life. He's living in a place where he cannot get the police to really do anything meaningful about the problem. And the fact that the police can't or won't help him has aggravated the situation. I think he's really in a position where his only recourse is going to be to move. And that's an outrage. It's an outrage that anyone in this country should have to uproot themselves and move their home to get away from this form of absolute discourteous lawlessness.
Are there other solutions besides law enforcement? People are at the end of the ropes. They feel there's nothing they can do. Law enforcement won't do anything. They feel they can't be heard. They feel disenfranchised. So what do you do when you reach the end of your rope? Are there other solutions besides law enforcement?
Well, the Anti-Noise Network is approaching this problem from several different directions, but I confess it is a long uphill struggle. We would like to engage the medical field, especially audiologists, in a public information program. So far, inexplicably, we haven't been able to get their attention. We would like to get some name entertainers behind this program. Peter Townsend would make a great spokesman, for example, since he's already stated publicly that he's damaged his hearing. That's the sort of thing we're looking at. It's among other things.
Are you still there?
Yeah.
Okay, we've lost you a little bit, but okay, we can continue.
That's the sort of thing we're looking at. It's among other things that we're looking at.
Okay, you mentioned something about the firefighters. I thought I lost you for a minute there. I couldn't hear you, so didn't know if we faded out or what. But another thing you mentioned is the state, the firefighters union or something like that, and that was interesting. Can you elaborate a little bit on that?
Yeah, I'm sorry, I dropped the ball there. There's a related issue here that you and I had talked about, and that's the state firefighters union, because the related issue here that's very important is the endangerment of emergency workers. Because we know that sirens cannot be heard over the din of just one person's stereo at a traffic light. And I see it all the time because I live in a city where emergency vehicles are frequently on the road. The siren is heard many blocks away, and this big red truck with the flashing lights is bearing down an intersection, and there's always one guy with his windows up and his noise box screaming who continues right on through. He can't hear anything in there. The SWAT team commander, who a couple of years ago managed to get Florida's car noise law tightened, said that in his mind, the danger to emergency crews from subwoofer noise was the biggest public safety issue in the state.
A lot of the emails you mentioned to me that you get seem to cry out for a class action lawsuit. Is this possible against the companies who are producing these products?
Afraid not. I see a lot of that. It seems like an easy solution, but in fact it's not going to work. I'm a retired paralegal, and I'm quite confident, unfortunately, that there is no basis for a class action suit here. What we may have is a product liability issue. We'd like to see a test lawsuit against a subwoofer manufacturer, because if you look at their advertising, it's clear that they're not selling a music delivery system. They're promoting a weapon. Their ads don't use the word music at all, but they do say defy, damage, destroy, ignite. A reputable company like Sony should not be exploiting its market with a slogan that says, disturb the peace. That's corporate irresponsibility.
One of my favorites, or not so favorites, if you want to put it that way, for a better way to put it, is who was the company who used Shake the Living, Wake the Dead?
I've seen that one. I cannot remember which company that is. It's one of the big ones. It's one of the ones that sells. It's a major manufacturer of this sort of equipment. It might be Pioneer, but I don't want to. I shouldn't really say. I don't know, but you can find that on the internet. Shake the Living and Wake the Dead. What has that got to do with music? Does anyone know?
Well, it definitely is encouraging antisocial behavior. Yep. So why hasn't any lawsuit begun of any kind, whether it be for the products themselves or the product liability you mentioned? Why hasn't, in a big country like this, and even across the world, why haven't we seen anything starting in the form of a lawsuit? Why hasn't this happened?
Very simple. We can't find an attorney to take the case. It is very much off the beaten path. It's very much uncharted waters. It's terra incognita. Attorneys have no idea how to approach this. There are several different angles, and all of them seem to be completely and utterly reluctant to take that giant step that says, yeah, I'm brave enough to try this. And we haven't found a single one yet that will do that. And some of them actually think that we're crazy to even think about it. But it is, I think it's going to come. I think there's going to come a day when people are so fed up that some attorney somewhere will say, listen, this is a major national problem, and someone needs to step up to it.
Now, supposing that happens, we're probably going to see a select few, rise up and complain about freedom of speech. But isn't this a situation where the old your rights end where mine begin thing here? Is there really a freedom of speech issue here with telling somebody or reminding them to have the common sense and courtesy to turn their music down?
No, there is no freedom of speech issue here. People ticketed for making this sort of noise like to raise that as a sort of a rallying cry for their guilt. It's the old equivalent of yelling fire in a crowded theater. The freedom of speech issue is not here. It really isn't. And in fact, the fact that there are laws against this specific behavior right away tells you that it is not socially acceptable. Right? I mean, there's a law against it, so you can't do it. And those laws exist all over the country. So if they were freedom of speech issues, by now someone would have won a case based on that, and no one ever has.
Well, if it shakes your windows, your walls, that is something where, your freedom of speech stops.
At my ears.
At my ears. That's the truth.
You're invading my space is what you're doing, and against my will.
So you do see no freedom of speech issue in this?
Not in the least.
So what does your group in Florida do about all of this? Can you share a little bit about that?
Well, we encourage the cities to do more by speaking with and writing to the city council members, the police chiefs, the mayors, the local newspapers, trying to call attention to the problem and seeking cooperation in fighting it. And we send letters to those who don't get it, including installers of the subwoofers who like to brag about how much noise their customers can generate. We try to enlighten them about the damage they're doing. And sometimes, you get a response. I had one stereo installer call me in despair, saying he'd give anything to go back to installing good old equipment designed to play music, because he said his current customer base is very aggressive. And so when they come in and they spend all those thousands on subwoofers and stereo equipment, he says he warns them that these devices do have upper range limits. You can't turn them on full blast. But then they do that, they blow them out, and they come back into his store and threaten him with violence. He's had his life threatened a couple of times by these people. The other thing we do is we try to offer comfort to fellow sufferers. It helps people to know that they're not alone. A lot of people feel very isolated by this sort of antisocial environment that they're trapped in. And we educate lawmakers who show signs of thinking that this is not an important problem. We want them to know it very much is an important problem. We sort of feel like we're where the anti-tobacco folks were about 20 years ago. We have a lot of awareness training to do, and we have to keep our efforts up to capture media attention, because this is a national problem, and it's getting worse all the time. We do foresee a plague of deafness in this country in the next 7 to 10 years. It's going to be costly, as towns and cities have to find ways to accommodate the hard of hearing without punishing the rest of us who still have the ears they were born with. As you said, a lot of us can't go into the movies anymore, can't go into restaurants. And that sort of thing is going to become epidemic, especially in classrooms.
Judy, I want to thank you for helping us put together this program today, and I hope it will help raise awareness and gain support in addressing and doing something proactive to deal with this plague as many see it.
So thanks so much for having me on.
If you would like more information about solving noise pollution problems in your community and how to become part of the solution, you can visit Noise Free America online at www.noisefree.org or Noise Off at www.noiseoff.org or Lower the Boom at www.lowertheboom.org. All of these organizations share resources and contain lots of useful information and advice. This is Robert Carillio and Judy Ellis. Thanks for listening.
Green Arenas is an Inquisitor Media original production hosted by me, Robert Carillio,
Jeremy Hempy,
and Kim McDonald. Our theme song is Cuyahoga by REM.
If you like this episode, please give us a follow on Instagram at Green Arenas and subscribe on YouTube.